Hello YouTube, Jerry Kirkpatrick here, and in this video we're going to be taking 3 straight pieces and making them bent pieces. And in doing so, I'm going to be using 3 different radiuses of these pieces that I make for each individual. Every time I make a bend, I'll make another one of these, and then when I'm done with them, I usually cut them apart and use them for different projects. Almost all of your bends in a home shop, in your garage, they're all going to be different, so I don't see any use in keeping these, because they probably won't work for the next project that you're going to have. I do have one piece that I made back in the 80s. It's a piece 1/2 by 2 solid bar stock, hot rolled, that I have ground or milled a 45-degree angle on it, and it's about 22 inches long, and I have found that piece to be used more than anything else when I'm clamping something to my table to do some bending on it. Thin material, right angle bends, because I can move it from one end to the other end if I have a third leg. A lot of the bending that I do is either in the hydraulic press. I do a lot of bending with my treadle hammer, and very seldom, unless it's a very small part, will I use the vise. So I know that in the last video there may have been some confusion about what I was saying about using these sample pieces for laying out a bend. And I said many times that you would either add or subtract material to get your final shape. So before I get into bending this heavier material, I'm going to go through a short section on how these are actually used. And as soon as I get finished with that, we'll get to mounting my bending fixture and then laying out the pieces for the setback for different radiuses of bend, and then we'll get some bending done. So with that, let's get over to the layout table. So before we get started on taking a look at bending these 3 pieces, one with a fairly sharp bend, a 1/4 inch radius, and a 1/2 inch radius in 06 aluminum, I thought I might somewhat clarify what we did in the last video using these 2 pieces. I know I did quite a bit of laying them around, making marks and such, and then I would say add some here, remove some in a different area, and that may have been confusing to some of you. So what I'm going to do is take the same 2 pieces, the thin material, one with a very sharp bend here, and one with a 1/16 of an inch radius here, and show you exactly how I would lay a lid out on a box like this. So let's start with the one with a sharp bend, and we really don't care what this distance is. It's whatever that you're going to be working with at the time. And the other thing I've done is I've made a mark here that is only a 1/2 inch down that will represent taking a margin off of here. And then I have one here at 1.25 inches, which will represent adding some material to this side. So I have my 1-inch mark up at the top here, and I know I want my lid to be wide of this. If I put it right on top, I'll never get the lid on. So I need to space it out just slightly so I can slide the lid onto maybe a 1/64 of an inch or something very, very small. So to start this off, and I don't like using a pencil. I think a pencil is even too wide if you're working with very close tolerances. So I'm going to take a scribe and I'm just going to make a little prick right there, and that is just a very small amount past this edge, and I'm going to put my tangent mark right on that. Line this up here, then I'm going to put another prick mark right there and another one right there. Now they are right here, just outside the line there, and right there. So I know that this is my tangent point. From the tangent point to here was another 1 inch, because these legs were equal before I started. The only reason that this one is shorter now is because of the radius, which is very sharp, of that bend. So now I know the end of this one is right here. So when I lay this out, this amount here is going to be reduced. I still have 1 inch to tangent, and I'm going to cut off whatever the amount is from here to here, and that will make this lid 1/2 inch down from the top. On the other side here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a small prick mark just outside. We know that from this point to this point is exactly 1 inch. And we know that from here to here is whatever it's going to take to make this bend. So right there, there's my little tick mark. The distance from here to here is what you're going to add to this leg to come down 1.25 inches. And to get a total layout, you can mark from your tangent point to the tangent point. That gives you the length of this lid. From your tangent point down to here, right here, less the material that you're taking off from this leg will be added there, and then from your tangent point to the amount that you're going to add on this side will make it 1.25 inches down here. So here we have this same drawing that I had on the sharp bend. On this one here, the same thing. I'm going to have the lid come down a 1/2 inch from the top here and 1.25 inches from the top on this side. And if you remember, by having a bend in here, a radius in here, we're going to have 2 tangent points. One tangent point here, where this straight meets the curve, and then we're going to have another tangent point here, where this straight edge meets this curve. So I'm going to take the 1 inch and I'm going to put the tangent point here just slightly outside of the line here. And I'm going to make a tick mark. I'm also going to make a tick mark at my second tangent point here. I'm going to make a tick mark at the end of that leg and a tick mark, well, I really don't need it, but I'll put a tick mark at the end of this leg, because we're not going to measure from the 1 inch, we're going to measure from the tangent point. One is there, one is there, one is there, and one is there. So once again, we're going to take from the end of this leg and subtract that amount from it to get up to our 1/2 inch. So our tick marks are here, 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 and here. So from the end of this leg, while it's here, we're going to add that much. Whatever this dimension is going to be added to our 2 inch, how do I say that? We know that from the tangent point here to here is 1 inch, but we're going to have to add this amount to come out to the 1.25 inches. And then to get your width, we go from here to here. So I hope I made that a little bit more clear. Let's get on to bending the aluminum with a fairly sharp radius, a 1/4 inch radius, and a 1/2 inch radius. So I mentioned earlier that the only piece that I keep in my well, just a round, so for bending, is this piece of 1/2 by 3 that I've milled a 45-degree on, and this is the only piece that I keep. The rest of them, like these, this one and this one, when I get finished with this demonstration, I'll probably just cut them up or put them somewhere where I can use the material in them, because I'll probably never do this particular bend again. So this one here is 1 inch round tubing, so that gives me a 1/2 inch radius. This one is 1/2 inch bar stock, and that will give me a 1/4 inch radius. This is just a piece of 1/8 by 1 by 1 angle iron, and it has almost no radius on this edge at all. And the way I make these is I always make them flush on the bottom and flush in the front, so I can line these up with the front edge of the table. So with these being flush on the bottom, I use a piece of spacer that is the same thickness of the material that I will be bending. And then on top of that, I just put a piece of cardboard, and that gives me enough space to slide these pieces under. So the way I set them up is I'll just put my first one down, set that on there. Then I have another piece, a second piece, the piece that almost always goes on my left side is 1.5 inches wide. And I'll show you why that's 1.5 inches in just a moment. So there I have my two spacer pieces. I'm going to line this up with the front, line this up with the edge of my table. Get that one out of the way. Clamp that down. Put a straight edge on here. And as soon as I feel it touch the square, I know I'm up where it ought to be. And this one is still free to move around a bit. And usually if you clamp this one down, this one comes up. But on this one, it didn't come up much. But I can still move things around. So I take a 1 inch, this just happened to be a tool bit for the lathe, 1/2 inch wide. I set that right on there. I take this piece, set it right on the table, and push it up so I have a sandwich between this piece, my 1/2 inch piece. This is setting on top of what will become the fence. Push that up there, and then I just push this piece underneath here until I feel it touch this piece here. Right, like that. Now, each place I've welded the whatever the radius is, there is the weld that's on the inside. So I space this out 1/2 inch to get away from any weld or any irregularity that might be in this area here. Once I get that, once again I square it. Check my fence for square. Clamp it, and I'm ready to bend. So now to make my bends, here once again I have my 3 pieces. These are 6 inches long. I made a mark at 3 inches. And I've put a 3 on each one of the pieces, and that 3 will go under each of my bending radiuses here. So this one here, I know that there's a very small radius on the leading edge of this piece here. So I can take this line and put it just maybe a 32nd or so under this leading edge, and I'll know that I'm in where I ought to be. So I'll push this in here, pull this up tight against my fence there, so I know this piece is going to be bent square. I have my line just barely hidden under the radius, under the nose of this piece, and I'm going to clamp this down. And I try to push as tightly as I can against the wherever the radius is going to be. I think that looks pretty good. Yep, I think I'm right on there. So there's my first piece with a very tight radius. I am open just a little, so I can close that up. And I try to make all of my bend, if I want to adjust this, I try to make it in the bend, not out in these legs. So I think that one's looking pretty good. So with this one, we have 1/2 inch bar stock here. So that gives me a 1/4 inch radius. So I want to have this line in the center of the radius here, on the center of this 1/2 inch bar stock. So that means I have to come this way 1/4 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is take my square here, mark this at 2 3/4 right there. Square this up. Now I have my second mark, a quarter of an inch this way, which is the tangent. Pull this in until that line is square on the table. Once that line is square on the table, I know I'm on the center of the 1/2 inch bar stock. Once again, I'm going to clamp it. There's my second piece. You can see that the tangent point is right where it should be, and the second line is right at the tangent point, or the center of the radius, being this is 90, is in the proper place. So for bending it around the 1 inch, which gives me a 1/2 inch set back there. So I'm going to set my square at 2.5 inches. Square it up. Mark a line that goes to the front edge of my bench here, which is also the front edge of my 1 inch tubing there. I'm going to slide this in until I'm squared up on the edge of the table, and this is square. I already have a fence here, so I know my piece is square. I'm going to clamp that down. There again, I'm trying to stay as close as I can to the bend itself. I don't want to be bending this portion up here. I want most of my bend in this radius here. And there we have our last bend. So I know that my tangent point, where the start of the bend is exactly at the tangent point of the bend. There's half of the bend. You can see that little line there, and then an equidistance to the second tangent. And the reason I clamp these down before I make the bend is this will become more apparent when we start making the pieces for the tank. Once you get up beyond a 45 degree, this wants to move this piece out. So if this is here, as you come up, once you get at 45 degree, the bend wants to slide on you and you won't get a true radius. So that's it. Here we have the 3 different bends. You can see the difference in the height because we're all at the same distance up here. We can line these up this way. If you look at here, since these are all of my 3-inch, all 3 of the tangent point marks line up perfectly. Now we have all 3 pieces bent for the next video, next installment. We have the 1/2 inch radius, 1/4 inch radius, and a fairly tight bend. And in the next video, what we're going to do is lay out a cut length. We want to make a tank typical of this, and first we want to lay out all of the different lengths of all of the different legs and determine what the degree of bend is. This one you can see is open, this one you can see is closed, this one you can see is a 90. So we're going to relate the sharp bend, 1/2 inch radius bend, and around a 1/2 inch piece, 1/4 inch radius, and a 1/2 inch radius that's bent around a 1 inch piece of material. And we're going to go through each of these bends and see how we lay them out one to the other, and determining what the length of each of these legs is in one shot. So thank you for watching. I do like coffee, and we'll see you in the next video.